Well, polls in Germany are showing a striking shift. The far-right Alternative for Deutschland has now emerged as the country's most popular party. Two new surveys suggest the party is on the verge of a historic breakthrough. Now, if an election was to be held now in Germany, the AfD would finish on top with 27% of the vote. Chancellor Friedrich Merz's conservative CDU would follow closely behind at 24%. The centre-left Social Democrats and the Greens trail by a wide margin, polling at 12% and 15% respectively. Now, these numbers land as the governing coalition, this is a partnership between the conservative CDU and the Social Democrats, marks its first year in office. Chancellor Merz is facing mounting pressure as government approval ratings hit historic lows. In fact, it's the weakest first-year rating for any German administration since 1997. And here is what the Chancellor had to say in an interview with German broadcaster ZDF on Wednesday when he was asked about his low popularity.
What has been neglected for 10 years cannot be corrected in 10 days. We are not a speedboat that can be quickly turned around with a sharp U-turn. We are a large, heavy ship, and steering it onto a new course requires strength and effort, as well as a clear destination to aim for. And I'll say quite openly, yes, we are falling short of expectations, including the standards we set for ourselves.
Well, for more on this, let's talk to DW political correspondent Simon Young. Simon, we'll get to the AfD in a moment because I want to start with the fact that a federal government in Germany has never been so poorly rated after its first year in office, at least not in decades. Why is Friedrich Merz and his coalition government so unpopular with the public in Germany?
Yeah, Christina, I think there are obviously a number of reasons, but you could boil it down to Friedrich Merz's personality and the way that this coalition has been working together. So looking at Friedrich Merz himself, actually, even when he came into power pretty soon afterwards, just a year ago, people were saying, you know, he doesn't have the right temperament to be Chancellor. They felt that he was aloof, not in touch with ordinary people, and that he's not a strong leader. These are the sort of things people were already saying as he began the job, and he hasn't really managed to convince people otherwise. He's had a few gaffes in public. The other day he was sort of saying that people shouldn't really rely on the state pension system, which got a lot of newspapers very excited. I'm sure a lot of the electorate looked at that with concern. He has been noted for some unguarded comments. So that's the Chancellor himself, and now he's head of a coalition, as you mentioned, two parties with very different ideological backgrounds, centre-left and centre-right, and on many things they don't agree. But even within that, we've had these coalitions before in Germany. If they keep discipline, it can work. The discipline here seems to be pretty bad. There's a lot of moaning and grumbling and briefing in the newspapers and in the media. And, you know, there's a real sense that this government is wobbling and not getting on with the job. And you see that also, of course, with the economy, which has been continuing to struggle.
Yeah. And my next point was going to be about the economy, because one of the promises Merz made to the public was that he's going to fix the economy, and he's not been able to deliver on that front. Is there any signalling that there is a plan here that could change the trend, that could turn around this ailing economy?
Well, I mean, of course, there is a plan. So far, the government's economic policy has been focused on quite a lot of borrowing and also investment in infrastructure, which is badly needed for things like roads and schools, but also for defence, given the need to sort of build up Germany's armed forces. So that's really where the government has been constrained. Now, with GDP growth so anemic, it's expected to be well below 1% again this year. The Conservatives say, you know, in particular, they want to focus on freeing up business. They want to cut bureaucracy and cut taxes for business, cut the non-wage costs that firms have to pay, and all these kind of things. But those measures, even though they are being pushed through, they don't bring growth immediately. I think that's really what people want to see. They want to feel that German industry can get back on its feet. And of course, the global context is so difficult with the tariffs from the US and the competition from China, not to mention the war in Iraq.
Yeah, and then, of course, going to the big headline being the far-right polling as it has. What is behind the far-right's rise? And when you unpack the picture there, you see that the AfD is polling even stronger at a regional level.
Yeah. What's behind it? Well, I mean, this is a question we've looked at many times, isn't it? The issues that get people going. It is the economy, but certainly also migration. Actually, migration's an area where this government has done something. It's toughened the border policy. It's even begun repatriating significant numbers of people to countries like Afghanistan. I think there's wider distrust in the institutions. I think that a lot of voters think, well, these people aren't getting on with it. Let's look at the other parties. Let's look at the alternative for Germany. Even if they are a far-right party, maybe they can do something for me. And as you mentioned, in the east of the country, the AfD has been particularly strong. This poll shows that in Saxony-Anhalt, which is a rural state in the east of Germany, for the first time, the AfD could actually get a clear majority on its own, which means that later this year in September, when there's an election in that state, it's possible that the AfD could take power. That would be a huge boost for them, a seismic event in German politics, a far-right party running one of the states. And, that would give them a voice also at national level in the second chamber of parliament. They've been represented and so on. So it would be a really significant event and something the government in Berlin under Friedrich Merz is desperate to avoid.
Yeah, Simon, we have very little time left. But, when you look at all of this, the polling data, as you're talking to voters, what's your impression of where politics is headed in Germany?
Well, it all depends. If the coalition can, as I say, work more harmoniously together, focus on change, give people the feeling that they are able to get a grip on the economy in particular, improve the communication, then that can turn things around. At the moment, we've got headlines saying, is Friedrich Merz on the brink? Who comes after him? So those are the questions that need to be answered. Well, if Friedrich Merz wants to stay in power, he's really got to bring his government together and communicate better.
Much appreciated. That's our Simon Young, DW political correspondent. Thank you.